Even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God.
By June of 1968, the United States felt, to many, like a nation teetering on the edge. Every night, Americans watched the carnage of the Vietnam War on their television screens. That April, Martin Luther King Jr. had been killed in cold blood in Memphis, Tennessee, triggering riots in cities across the country. Into this chaos stepped Robert F. Kennedy, the younger brother of slain President John F. Kennedy, as a candidate in the 1968 presidential election. But then, on what should have been a celebratory night for his inspiring campaign in early June, RFK was shot and killed too. It was tragically easy to see Kennedy's assassination as a damning indictment of the state of the country. And just as with the assassination of his brother 4.5 years earlier, and Martin Luther King Jr. just 2 months before, the nation both reeled and demanded to know how something like this could have happened, and who had pulled the trigger. In this case, the nation didn't have to wait long for answers. Immediately after Kennedy's assassination, his killer was revealed as Sirhan Sirhan, a 24-year-old Palestinian man who had become obsessed with killing Kennedy. Severely traumatized by the violence of his youth, Sirhan had filled his journal with entries about his desire to kill Kennedy, the sooner the better, because of Kennedy's pledged support for Israel. And on June 5, 1968, he put his murderous plan into action. That day, Sirhan Sirhan spent the afternoon practicing target shooting with his pistol. That night, he went to the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, where Kennedy was planning to address his supporters after winning the California and South Dakota primaries, putting Kennedy in second place behind Vice President Hubert Humphrey in the race for the Democratic nomination. As he held a newspaper clipping that was critical of Kennedy in his pocket, Sirhan Sirhan asked around the hotel to confirm that Kennedy would walk through the kitchen on his way to address the media after his speech. Then, he waited. Shortly after midnight, Kennedy entered the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel just as Sirhan Sirhan had expected. Sirhan leapt forward with his pistol and fired, striking Kennedy and several others before onlookers leapt forward to restrain him. Though Kennedy hung on for a full day, he died from his wounds shortly after midnight on June 6, 1968, at the age of just 42. His life was over, but the outrage and debate over his death persists to this day. How could American history have been different if Kennedy had survived? And why do so many people, including some of Kennedy's own children, as well as witnesses of the assassination, believe that Sirhan Sirhan wasn't the only shooter at the Ambassador Hotel on June 5th? This is the full story behind the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy, from the night of his death to the theories that have emerged in the decades since. You're listening to History Uncovered, brought to you by the digital publisher All That's Interesting, where we explore the uncharted corners of the natural world and the world past. I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Kalina Fraga.
And I'm All That's Interesting staff writer Austin Harvey.
Today, we're untangling the tragic story behind the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. I'm excited to talk about this because it's a really crazy story. It's actually very topical in a way that is...
Yeah, there is an RFK in the current presidential administration. And
well, there's also a lot of stuff with Israel and Palestine in this story, kind of surprisingly.
I obviously knew before we did our episode on it, the bare, essentials of the JFK assassination. I actually don't know anything about this one. I know that he was killed, and that's about where my knowledge stops.
Yeah. It's a really dramatic story, and I sort of touched on this in the intro, but it came during a very dramatic time in American history, because this is 1968. 2 months before this, Martin Luther King was killed. Meanwhile, the nation is gearing up for a presidential election. I'll get into that in a second, but Vietnam is going on. It's a lot of it's a very chaotic time, and then he gets killed, and it's just people just couldn't believe it. So just to start, who is Bobby Kennedy? He is John F. Kennedy's younger brother. In the Kennedy administration, he was the attorney general, and at the time he was running for president in 1968, he was the senator from New York, or one of the senators from New York.
Interesting.
He had a very complicated relationship with the sitting president, who was Lyndon Johnson. When JFK was choosing his vice president, RFK did not want it to be Lyndon Johnson. And Johnson knew that.
What was the reasoning there?
I just didn't like him. They just didn't get along.
Just like, hey, dude, not him.
Not him.
Bad vibes. Interesting.
Yeah. Johnson knew this was very sensitive to that. Obviously, then JFK was killed, and RFK felt like Johnson had been an inelegant successor to his brother, to Camelot and all that glamour and everything. And Johnson was really paranoid about the Kennedy kind of like charm and popularity.
No, that's understandable, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think LBJ was a very
He
known to
didn't
be a
have the
charming
same
guy.
charisma. Yeah, for sure. He had his own kind of charisma, but he didn't have the Kennedy charisma. In 1964, when Johnson was being nominated for president in his own right, he made sure that he spoke before Bobby Kennedy because he was worried that the convention would switch their allegiance to him. And he did. When Bobby Kennedy spoke after Johnson, the applause was like non-ending.
Wow. Yeah, I guess it would be harder to follow that up than to go first. Because
Right.
either way, you're like,
So there's already this tension there between them. This is 1968. Johnson is the sitting president. So everyone assumes he's going to run for his own second term because he completed Kennedy's term, had his own term, and he could run for one more.
What was his was he generally favorable at that point in time, or was it kind of...
Well, Vietnam had made him very unpopular.
I was going to say, it seemed like that might be an issue for him anyway.
People would stand outside the White House and chant, LBJ, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Like, it was very intense time. And like, this is a whole other thing, but it's a little bit unfair because Johnson kind of inherited, Kennedy's war and then expanded it. So everyone assumes Johnson's going to run. And then on March 16th, RFK says he will run against Johnson, against his own party because they're both Democrats.
Right, yeah.
So this is surprising to a lot of people. And then to make things even more surprising, 2 weeks later, Johnson drops out.
Wow. That's all it took.
Well, I'm sure he was sort of leaning that way anyway,
sure.
But
Final nail in the coffin there.
This is a very famous moment in American history where he announces on television, says, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party. Like that quote is like,
wow.
If you study American history, like you will have heard that in his like Texas drawl. So Kennedy was jumping into the race. Some people were upset about this. I mean, people were upset about it for a lot of reasons. It was like, for one, the Democratic establishment was kind of like behind Johnson. Okay, now Johnson's dropping out. There was another senator named Eugene McCarthy, who was kind of like the Bernie Sanders of his day. And a lot of people thought that RFK had seen McCarthy's success and he was going to like just kind of take away that. And it did split like sort of Democrats, like which way do we go, RFK or McCarthy?
Classic problem for Democrats.
And meanwhile, LBJ's vice president decides to run as well. So after LBJ had dropped out.
Wow. Who was LBJ's vice president?
Hubert Humphrey.
Hubert Humphrey. I've heard the name.
Yeah. So this is very divisive. But Kennedy has like a real chance of winning. Hubert Humphrey, it's kind of interesting because the system is a bit different now. Although our last election it was sort of like this because Hubert Humphrey joined the race too late to run in the primaries. So he was just gathering delegates, people who would pledge their support to him. Meanwhile, Kennedy and McCarthy were running primary by primary. And Kennedy was like catching up to him doing this.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I'm imagining he was just as charming as his brother.
Yes, very charming. I mean, there's a lot of like famous moments from the Kennedy like story, but like one famous moment from Bobby Kennedy's life was when MLK was assassinated. He was addressing a crowd, I want to say in like Milwaukee or Detroit, some big city, and he announced it to the crowd what had happened and how he handled the news and his like response to it. This is all on YouTube. He's just very empathetic and calm and like
especially like in the moment too.
And I think it was the first time he had ever publicly invoked his brother's assassination. He was like, I know how it feels like to have I think what he said, maybe I should double check this, but I think he said, I know what it feels like to have like a white man like kill a family member. And I think he was calling for like peace, which obviously there were like riots after the assassination. It's a lot of anger.
Right. Yeah. No, of course.
But anyway, this is the atmosphere that Bobby Kennedy is running in. By June, the June 4th primary was a really important one because if Kennedy won South Dakota and California, he had the potential to knock Eugene McCarthy out of the race. So it would be kind of a two-way race between him and Hubert Humphrey. But at this point, he'd also drawn the attention of a young man named Saran Saran. This is his assassin. Saran Saran is a deeply complicated person, I would say. He was born in 1944 in Jerusalem to a family of Christian Arabs. In 1948, his family fled to Jordan during the violence of the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. And as a very young child, he was like horribly traumatized by the violence he saw during this war. He saw bombings, shootings. He saw his older brother die when a truck, I think it was veering away, and it just ran over his brother. He saw the disembowelment of a man who had been injured during the fighting. At one point, he was like getting water from a well, and there was a human hand in the bucket. Like, it was just lots of horrible stuff that he saw. His mother later said he was a victim all his life since he was a baby and a child. He never had a childhood, never was happy, never laughed. All he has seen is fear, hunger, dying human beings in pieces. It's hard enough for a big man, but for a child.
Yeah, yikes.
Yeah, so a lot of very traumatic stuff in his childhood. In 1956, his family emigrates to the U.S. as Palestinian refugees, where he, is kind of like a normal young man, nothing
other than all the trauma and baggage of.
I mean, he's described as bookish and quiet. No, there's no like outbursts or anything that people reported.
Yeah, he didn't come over and like wasn't a problem child or wasn't like a
he wasn't like killing,
didn't lash out or like
animals or
whatever.
something.
Right.
But he does become outraged as Kennedy's running for president because of Kennedy's support for Israel. And it is a little unclear of like where Saran like heard about this. It's been suggested that he saw a documentary in May which said that Kennedy supported Israel. And there was also a radio program that said that Kennedy would send fighter jets to help Israel. But it's like he kept these journals, and a lot of his like anti-Kennedy stuff came before these things were aired. So it's maybe a combination of the two. But his journals were, given that he went ahead with the assassination, are pretty damning. He wrote things like, my determination to eliminate RFK is becoming more and more of an unshakable obsession. Robert F. Kennedy must be assassinated before June 5th, 1968.
Wow. That's a really... Why June 5th?
It's the anniversary of the Six-Day War, which Israel took over great swaths of territory. And that is why he chose that date. He says, RFK must be disposed of. Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy must soon die. Wow,
yeah. It's pretty hard to, pretty hard to look at that and be like, wonder what he's planning.
Right, yeah.
Jeez.
On June 5th, he puts his plan into action. And again, that's on the anniversary of the Six-Day War.
So that happened in 1967. So that's like fresh.
Very fresh. It also happens to be the day that Kennedy is celebrating his victory in the California and South Dakota primaries. So this puts Kennedy again in a good position to battle with Humphrey for the nomination in Chicago, which, as history buffs will know, was a total disaster. There were huge riots. The police, attacked the crowds. It was very violent.
Oof.
Hubert Humphrey became the nominee. But we can get into that a bit more.
Is that why there were riots?
It felt unfair to a lot of people. I think Eugene McCarthy was still in the race at that point because Kennedy's supporters wanted to support someone.
Right.
Humphrey felt like a continuation of LBJ's policies, which no one wanted because that was Vietnam.
Sure.
So, on June 5th, RFK is at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. He's with his wife, Ethel, who was 3 months pregnant at the time. And to a huge crowd in the ballroom, he gives his final speech. He says, I think we can end the divisions within the United States, the violence, the disenchantment with our society. We are a great country, an unselfish country, a compassionate country. And I intend to make that my basis for running. So my thanks to all of you, and now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
Yeah, he's got my vote, geez.
People really liked him. At around 12:15 a.m., he walks into the kitchen of the Ambassador Hotel. He's cutting through the kitchen on his way to address the media. He's with a man named Paul Schrade, who was a regional director of the United Auto Workers, who had helped Kennedy, and Kennedy had thanked him specifically in his speech. So Kennedy was kind of moving slowly through the kitchen and shaking hands with people there when gunshots ring out. Kennedy, Schrade, and 4 other people were shot. Kennedy falls to the ground. He asks everybody, okay, is Paul all right? But he's been fatally wounded, and Saran was apprehended immediately.
Where did, I don't know if we touched on this. Do we know where Saran's family settled in the United States when they came over?
In California.
In California,
yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember where. I want to say Pasadena, but I don't remember specifically where.
Yeah, I just want to know if he traveled extensively.
No.
Or if it was hey, he's at a hotel 10 minutes away.
He was nearby, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha.
Saran shouts, let me explain. I can explain. I did it for my country. I love my country. So again, this seems like motivated by his past.
Well, yeah, well, I'm saying when he says my country here, he's talking Palestine, not
Yes.
Right. Okay.
At his trial, Saran reiterates this. He says that RFK's support for Israel he said that RFK's support for Israel, quote, burned me up if he were in front of me the way I felt then. So help me God, he would have died right then and there. So like, it doesn't seem like it's a mystery at all. Saran confesses to the assassination on the suggestion of his attorney. But he also says that he doesn't remember shooting Kennedy. He doesn't remember preparing to shoot Kennedy. He says he was drunk. He says he was a supporter of Kennedy.
Interesting.
He says he doesn't remember writing his journals, and his attorneys have raised the possibility that he was hypnotized.
I was about to say, up until this point, it seems like, there's not much to talk about. It's like he had the notebooks. He was there. Doesn't seem like there's like a big conspiratorial angle you can take with this, like with the JFK one. But then, of course, there it is.
Yeah,
there it is.
It's actually very interesting because Paul Schrade and some of Kennedy's children, including Robert Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., who's now involved in government, and his sister Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, have expressed doubt about Saran's guilt. They claim that there's a possibility that there was a second gunman who somehow escaped capture. And I know this sounds a little bit nutty because there were so many witnesses and Saran confessed and et cetera, et cetera. But it is interesting that the evidence that people have found. For example, Saran's gun could hold 8 bullets only. But one tape of the assassination seems to have recorded 13 shots. Now, it's a little... Are those gunshots in the tape? Unclear. But there's something that sounds like gunshots, and there are more than 8.
They were in a kitchen. A hotel kitchen could be busy, could have lots of bangs and scrapes.
Although I assume they all stopped working when Kennedy walked in to...
I don't know, maybe one waiter didn't. It's great that Bobby Kennedy is here. I do have customers.
Maybe, yeah. Kennedy was shot 3 times, and 5 others were shot once. So that's 8 bullets accounted for. But witnesses claimed that there were bullet holes in the door frames of the kitchen pantry, and photos from the scene seem to show investigators examining the door frames.
Interesting. Well, but like the bullets, just because it hits somebody doesn't mean it's stuck in them. Could still also hit a door.
I think they recovered the bullets from the people.
Anyway,
the door frames were destroyed, so we don't know about that.
Yeah. Have they released this tape? Can I go, like, if I look this up, RFK assassination tape, can I watch it?
It's by I'm not sure there's a videotape of it. There's a recording of it. It's like a Polish journalist. There's definitely photographs and there's definitely like recorded stuff, but I don't think the actual moment was filmed that he was shot. So that part is a little strange. And the fact that the door frames were destroyed also is a little strange, but yeah. There's also Kennedy's fatal wound. He was shot at point blank range from behind, including a fatal shot in his head. But Saran was standing in front of him. So,
well, that's pretty. Should have led with that one. That one's pretty damning.
So people disputing this have said, okay, so Saran is facing him. He fires the gun. Kennedy must have turned instinctively away from the gun, which is how he would have been shot in the back of the head.
Okay, that makes sense.
And because he asked if everyone was okay, he would have seen people behind him shot as well. So that's kind of the way they solve those discrepancies, but it's strange. It's a little strange.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say without being there and seeing it.
Well, even the people who were there and saw it have.
Sure, but do they have any theories about who this other potential person would have been?
I assume the theory, I don't know for sure, but I assume the theory would be something like the deep state or the CIA to like stop RFK from...
Sure.
Winning. In any case, Saran was sentenced to death in 1969. They abolished the death penalty in California, so now he's serving life in prison. His appeals for parole have been blocked multiple times.
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another. Feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black.
So I did look this up. There are some interesting conspiracy theories. The one that answers the question I just asked is there's a theory that one of the security guards at the hotel might have been a second gunman. And the most common person that people cite would be someone named Thane Eugene Caesar, who was employed to protect Kennedy, but it was not his full-time job. And he was a staunch opponent of Kennedy's platform. He apparently had like very extremist far-right views. Not saying it happened. I'm just saying he.
It's interesting. I mean, I was waiting for like, and he was hired by someone.
No, that one would just be that he didn't like RFK and seized the opportunity. It doesn't even, the theory doesn't even like purport that he had coordinated with Saran. So it feels more like an opportunity kind of thing. Like, oh, someone's already shot at him, I might as well finish it off.
Yeah, that seems kind of insane to me.
Yeah. And then there's the Manchurian Candidate thing where someone hypnotized Saran to commit the murder. There's also something about a woman in a polka dot dress. Witnesses said they saw a woman in a polka dot dress in various locations throughout the Ambassador Hotel before and after the assassination. And she was apparently seen sitting outside on the stairway that led to the ballroom when Saran walked past her up the stairs. Interesting. There's a lot of reports of this woman in a polka dot dress. And then, yeah, there's the CIA involvement theory, which I'm sure the current Bobby Kennedy probably leans into that one.
I wonder. It's one of those moments in American history where, like, I mean, same with JFK, of like, if he had survived, how would history have been different? If RFK had made it to the convention, would he have won? Right,
because then Nixon ended up becoming president.
Exactly. The Democratic Party was fractured, and Nixon became president.
Seems to happen a lot with the Democratic Party. Have Republicans ever had that contentious of like a period, or they seem to kind of just always get behind someone in the end?
I mean, the one that comes to mind is in 1912, but I'm sure there have been times since then as well.
So is there any real, like, I know you said there's like been various like documentaries. Was RFK like a huge Israel supporter, or was he just an Israel supporter in the sense of like, not like really like maybe individually on an idealistic level, but more of like the U.S. is one of Israel's most prominent allies historically ever since the state was formed.
Right. And the state was very young at this point too.
Right.
You know? Yeah. I mean, but what he had said specifically was that he would send, I think, like 50 fighter jets to Israel.
Okay.
As I was writing this outline, I was like, like this is actually kind of a hot topic, even though it happened so long ago. There's a lot of current stuff going on.
It's just kind of been happening.
Yeah, it has. But it's very like like in like JFK's assassination, this was not a factor at all. Well,
right.
That we know of.
Yeah. It was more to do with like Cuba and mostly Cuba.
Just had to do with one guy, probably.
Yeah. It is fascinating how much of a major focal point Israel has become in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
I know it's like it's always been there. It's always been lurking around, but like, and granted, like things have ramped up in Gaza recently, so it's understandable. But for many people, that's like that was like the core. They were like, I'm a one issue voter and it's this thing. And it's an uncharted waters kind of politically right now. So
yeah, that's true. Just like in 1968.
Just like in 1968. Time. Yeah, wow.
Entered the Nixon years. It was quite a blow to the kind of the idealism of Kennedy and McCarthy.
Camelot to Watergate, very distinctly contrasting times in American governmental history.
Definitely. The pendulum often swings in strange ways.
Yeah. It is interesting to think that like two different Kennedy brothers assassinated in the same decade. And just like the decades of ramifications of that happening.
Their family has like so many tragedies, but to have two assassinations especially.
Yeah, have we talked about Rosemary Kennedy on this podcast before?
I don't think so.
That would be another interesting one to cover if people are interested in that. But long story short, she was horribly depressed, suffered from, I think, other mental issues. I'm not like entirely familiar. I know she was very
from
depressed.
Childhood. She had some.
Right. And she was like in her teenage years when lobotomies were first being rolled out as this like touted as this new sort of cure-all for malaise and other hysterical mental conditions. And they gave one to her. And as we now know, it doesn't really work out good for people.
I think she like never spoke or walked or something like that.
It was like, yeah, totally. Just,
and it wasn't like they gave it. It's like her dad was like, we're doing this and didn't tell. I'm pretty sure he didn't tell his wife, and then she got it and was horribly.
Yeah, I don't think he told anyone. I think it was just like a very like, all right, we're going to go do this. Get up.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to do a podcast on just like the Kennedy like tragedies, because there's also Chappaquiddick, the drowning of Ted Kennedy's friend, who was a girl. And JFK Jr. died in a plane crash. Like,
right. Well, we did talk about that one.
Did we?
Yeah.
We did a podcast on that?
We did an entire episode on that.
I completely forgot. I knew that I'd written about it a couple of times, but...
I like when we talk about presidents and political history because I don't know anything about it because I never paid attention to that in school. But you know so much, so it's like I get a little history lesson from Professor Kalina.
I mean, I think this stuff is so fascinating. The stories, you could connect it to so many things. I mean, to Nixon, of course, but also to like 1968 in general, and to LBJ, and then to the Kennedy family. And
well, it really illustrates just how complex these issues are. I think like part of the modern political discourse is that everything's so simplified and black and white in the way we talk about things.
Absolutely.
But then it's like, no, actually, this traces back decades often, and like not as simple as just like Joe Biden and Donald Trump should not send things to Israel. It's like, well, that's really not that simple. I would prefer genocide not be happening, but it's just not that simple.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I think about, not to make myself sound like I'm Nixon's like biggest fan in the world, but like people are just like, Nixon, Watergate, bad.
Bad, right.
And it's like, he had a really long political career. And yes, he did some very bad things, but he also did some kind of good things and was a very complicated person. Yeah, I just like learning about people like him.
Yeah, every president's done bad things.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tough job.
It is a tough job. Can't please everyone. But yeah. But that's that. That's Kennedy's assassination.
Very interesting.
Yeah, wild year. 68 and 69 were both pretty wild.
Yeah, especially coming off of like the high of the early to mid 60s.
Yeah. Everything turned like really dark, I think, in 68 and 69. Like the Manson murders, I think, were in 69.
Yeah, it was all around that same time.
Yeah, it's like all this like hope and color and like drugs and like free love had like, I don't know, transformed into something more grotesque.
Something really dark
point.
And twisted, yeah.
Yeah.
You can illustrate the mood shift through the Beatles albums. It was like Love Me Do to like Yellow Submarine, and then all of a sudden they're doing like Abbey Road, and you're like, this one's a little like Let It Be. You're like, these are a little weird and emotional, guys. You good? And then they break up.
And then they break up.
We could do episodes on the Beatles. You know,
we should, because they're doing that that 4-part
documentaries,
series.
yeah.
And that's another of my, it's like presidential history and like the Beatles.
I'm also a big Beatles fan.
Okay, great.
So that could be a fun one. I mean, we could at the very least talk about John Lennon's assassination.
Have we not talked about John Lennon's assassination?
I don't think in depth.
That would be a good episode.
Yeah, that story is really interesting as well.
There was also a really good documentary about it recently, because Mark David Chapman pled guilty, so he never went to trial. And the documentary is kind of about like, if he had gone to trial, what sort of evidence they would have had.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it was really interesting. And it went into like MK Ultra a little bit too at one point.
Of course, yeah. MK Ultra would also be really
we should be writing this
episode.
Down. So we're always like, what should we do this week? And then it's like, I don't know.
It's on audio.
That's true.
We haven't recorded.
Yeah.
So when we inevitably forget what we talked about.
Yeah. No, that'd be a good one. Because I don't think we have one scheduled for next time yet.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple ideas there.
There we go.
Yeah. But all right. It's enough waffling about. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of History Uncovered. Really appreciate you sticking around here. Hopefully you found the story interesting. I thought it was, as the one who didn't know anything about it. So now I do. If you liked this episode and you want to hear more, be sure to check us out on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, where you're probably already listening to this. You might be listening to it on YouTube, or, if you're not, we're on YouTube also. And TikTok and Instagram. See short form video content on both of those platforms as well. And we are, of course, always updating the website at allthat'sinteresting.com with stories like this and ones that are less depressing as well.
Yeah, that's true. Lots of cool discoveries, lots of sort of like unknown or forgotten history stuff. It's always interesting.
Always interesting.
Yeah. And if you want to stay up to date, you can join our newsletter by going to allthat'sinteresting.com/signup, or you can become a member at allthat'sinteresting.com/membership. Yeah. And if you want to reach out to us, give your opinions about this show or ideas for other shows, you can do that too. You can leave us a voicemail at 929-526-3029. Or send us an email at podcast@allthat'sinteresting.com.
Yeah, we went through a streak of like 5, maybe 6 episodes that were all just listener suggestions.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
It was very cool.
So yeah, we do check it out. And yeah, and if if you like the show, be sure to give us a good rating. Maybe write a nice comment. Makes us feel good, and that's nice.
That is nice. Yeah, we'll be back with something
different. We floated a few different ideas, so we'll see.
something fascinating, always interesting. Yeah. So yeah.
And if you're DMing me on Instagram, stop it.
Is someone DMing you on Instagram?
I've gotten like multiple Instagram DMs in the past few weeks. I don't know if it's from listeners or if it's from people who are reading stuff on the site, but
oh wow,
one of them was just taunting me for having pronouns in my bio. It's like, what are we doing here,
man?
Yeah.
I guess my Instagram. Well, I'm not on it very often, but it's also private, so no one can.
Yeah, I should probably just make mine private.
Yeah, or you could just leave social media.
Or just ignore it. Yeah, just maybe take a break. Okay.
Maybe. On that note. Yeah, we'll be back soon, and have a good, whatever day of the week it is when you're listening to this. It'll be Wednesday for a lot of people, but I don't know. It could be a different day for others.
Could be a different day. Could be any day. Could be Christmas morning.
It could be. All right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.